Hello everyone, my name is Scott Wilhite. Let's make a video. If you're watching this, unless it's clipped, it's on one of my 3 social media channels, either YouTube, which is Justice for Victims of Dusty, Justice for Victims of Dusty Broadfoot is the full name, Victims of Dusty is the username, Justice for Victims of Dusty, or TikTok or Substack. The top level purpose of the channels is to bring awareness to a phenomenon in social science called rape myth acceptance. This video I'm making to tell a story about Judge Brett Hall in Rockwall, Texas. So we're going to call this Rockwall County Injustice Part 2. I did a video earlier about another judge in Rockwall named David Rakow, who is dirty, a dirty motherfucker. And I don't say that with any animosity towards him now. I just crossed paths with him in 2007. And although I didn't know law then like I do now, he did things that a typical dirty judge is going to do. And I spent an hour in a video talking about that. As a result of David Rakow, the world is not going to come to an end because he's not the only judge who does dirty things. But there's been about 4 or 5 judges that I've crossed paths with within these 2 or 3 years back in 2006, 7, 8, 9. And although at the time I couldn't articulate the bad things that they did with Rakow, I knew it was going on at the time, and I told the story in the previous video. There's one other judge I'm going to talk about, a federal judge, retired, Jorge Solis. That'll be later. And then Solis, by the way, has not done bad things directly, sort of in that were negative towards me. He did in another case in a pretty important time of my life that when I saw what he did, which was for the first time in U.S. history, I thought, this is not the judge I'm going to fight the DOJ with. But there was the Rakow story, and I talked about that. And then there's another judge out of Rockwall, the only other district judge, I think there's only 2 state district judges in Rockwall. Rakow, now, he was a county judge when I crossed paths with him, and a guy named Brett Hall, which is Ralph Hall's son, my former U.S. representative out of Rockwall. Ralph has since passed. He died in 2019. Anyway, Ralph Hall, he was a rep for a long time. Well, Ralph's 2 sons, I think he only has 2 sons. I could be wrong about that. Doesn't matter. One is named Blakely. He was my attorney for a week or less in 2007. And then Brett Hall. And at the time, Brett Hall was a district judge. As I said in the Rakow video, I was falsely accused by a perpetrator who is a serial rapist of Rockwall High School students, and she recorded herself doing it. Her name then was Dusty Miller. Her name now is Dusty Broadfoot. Her name before then was Dusty Coursey. And when she was Dusty Coursey, she had a little girl named Reagan Coursey. Reagan Coursey now has 4 million followers as a social media influencer on the internet. And this is nothing against Reagan. And from what I understand, Reagan has made at least one long-form videos about me with Dusty, saying I'm the worst person in the world. And I haven't watched it. I haven't really heard any of the details. I did hear one detail, that Dusty has a binder. She has a binder. To start with, let's say everything in that binder is true. I don't know what it is, but I don't care. I've got video of Dusty serially raping Rockwall High School students, and on 2 nights, there were weapons involved, and on every night, there were drugs involved. And because Dusty was personally associated or affiliated or friends with the former Rockwall County District Attorney named Galen Ray Sumrow, who around that time was charged and convicted of a crime and sentenced to 17 years in prison, she was able to get away with these crimes. Now, as I said, she falsely accused me of something in November 2006. She immediately started trying to violate my bond because she was able to get a restraining order as a result of her, well, it's complicated, but as a result of one of her misdemeanor allegations, she was able to get a a it's not a TRO. It's more it's a restraining order that comes along with a criminal charge. So she was able to get that right away within 24 hours. Maybe the Monday after the Sunday she lied about the allegations. And then she tried to revoke my bond by way of something she says her son Preston said. And that happened in December. And I got a story about that. I may include it at the end of this. Because I talked about being able to get, if I had gotten location information, geographic cell phone location data from Dusty in March of 2007, I would have proved she was just abjectly lying. It would have completely thrown out the charges that, because this is the state's witness, and it's a he said, she said, and it was just completely, there was no question whatsoever that Dusty chased me to work sometime in March as a means of trying to violate my bond. And this is 3G technology, so the way cell phones worked and geolocation worked and triangulation worked, and I worked for the phone company for 20 years, and this is something I knew how it worked. If we had have gotten her cell phone data and we could have gotten mine, I could have animated our location on a map and shown that she chased me. She had to drive over 100 miles an hour for 5 miles at least in order to catch me. And although triangulation data is not that accurate, it would have been accurate enough to show that degree of what she did in order to try to violate my bond in March. Now, it's in the Rakow video. Well, that's not the first time she tried to violate my bond. First time was in December, a month after the December 5th false allegations. What I mean by violate my bond is she tried to put me in jail with lies. And the reason she did is because I had those videotapes, and still do, of her raping Rockwall high school students. I don't know if anybody's watching this and doesn't understand how severe it is, or thinks I'm just making shit up. I'm offering $250,000 as a reward for anybody who knows the names of those Rockwall high school students. They're kind of victims and perpetrators at the same time. In a weird, I got punked by Dusty. They were hate motivated sex crimes against me, perpetrated by Dusty as the kingpin, as the DOJ calls leaders of a conspiracy. We'll say, if you want to call it a conspiracy. Dusty just had little freak-offs that she had already been having the 2 years before I knew her. She invited Rockwall high school kids over into our house in the middle of the night where they could hide, sometimes participate without me knowing. And Dusty was able to talk me into doing very, very embarrassing things for the purpose of doing the embarrassing things. And she recorded all of it. I got those tapes in a weird way. She's trying to revoke my bond because I've got those tapes. Trying to cancel me. Cancel wasn't a thing back then. That's what she was trying to do. She's trying to cancel me somehow now. But she can't cancel me because I'm nobody. But I am telling the truth. And that's very valuable. Psychologically valuable. So she tried to revoke my bond in December by telling the court or telling the DA that Preston, her son, had seen me drive up to her garage door and bang on it and then drive off. Well, that would have violated my bond. And let me go ahead and tell it now. And I didn't tell this in the other story, but of course I've known it. I could prove that I didn't drive up to her garage through that same geolocation that the cell phone used. She was so far away from the interstate that I did drive on the interstate through Rockwall every day to go to work 5 days a week. So it would have shown me drive 2 miles from her house, or 3, however many miles as the crow flies, her house on Sycamore was to Interstate 30. But it would not have shown me connecting to any towers around her house. And I knew that then, in December. So I called. I'm getting a little off on a tangent, but we're going to talk about Brett Hall. He's a dirty motherfucker. I worked for AT&T at the time in network, and I was a network manager. I may come up with a clever comparison here in a second, but AT&T was the company that owned the cell towers that connected to my cell phone, that collected the geographic location from my cell phone. So as soon as I heard that she had lied and said that I drove up to her garage, I called somebody named Dora Lynn, one word, Dora Lynn Pecina. Pecina, I think. She was another flunky at the phone company who was in what's called asset protection. She was a coworker in the same crew, team, whatever, as a disgraced former Texas Ranger named Lane Aiken, aka Stalker Texas Ranger. Anyway, I knew Dora Lynn Pecina. And as soon as I heard that I was charged with that, I called Dora Lynn. I said, Dora Lynn, listen, you can help me out. And she and I had it was kind of a weird relationship. She's in HR. Nobody likes HR. Nobody should like HR. HR is kind of like the police. They're not really your friend. They're always building a case on you, sort of, in a way. I'm not saying everybody in the world is against everybody. That's just how corporate America works. HR is not your friend. She's in corporate America. I had worked with her a couple of times before. One time she even came in and interrogated me right after Dusty filed the charges a month earlier. So she interrogated me. Of course, I didn't do anything wrong, so I was fine. But a month later, when Dusty said, Preston said that I drove up to the house, I called Dora Lynn. I said, Dora Lynn, can you do me a favor? I've been charged with another crime. And I didn't do it, but can you, I don't know how to get geographic location information from our Tampa, I forget what the data center was called, but where all subpoenas in the country went at that time for triangulation data, for geographic location of cell phones. I knew where the data center was, and but I wasn't law enforcement. And even as an employee of AT&T, I knew their email addresses. I can't just email, there were 225,000 employees of AT&T back then. So it's not like, hey, I knew these guys over in the Tampa office. No, but I knew I could find them in our internal, sort of phone book. But it would be out of place for me to email them and say, hey, can I get my geographic location, my geodata for myself for this number at this time? They wouldn't necessarily respond to that. But Dora Lynn Pecina was in a position to ask for that data. And this is data that would not require a subpoena or a court order because it's AT&T's data. It's like if Home Depot suspects an associate, a cashier, steals money or somehow does something funny. So there's some funny business at their register earlier in the morning. Well, Home Depot will go into their surveillance and they'll go back into their sale transaction database and they'll pull their data to prove or disprove, find out what's going on with the cashier. Okay. Well, the police may subpoena that too at a later time if it becomes an alleged crime. That's how the data center for the geographic location worked at the phone company. And because it was my cell phone, I'm just asking for my geographic location. And Dora Lynn Pecina was asset protection. She's a former cop. So she's got law enforcement mind. And she wasn't stupid. But she's also kind of one of the dirty ones. And so she knew at that moment when I'm talking to her on the phone, I had a working relationship with her. I'm having a normal kind of a conversation with someone that I had spoken to half a dozen times for various reasons. But she would know at that moment that data would either prove that I was there or disprove that I was there. She doesn't have to be a cell phone expert or location expert in order to understand that about what I was asking for. In fact, I could argue that as an HR employee, Dora Lynn Pecina might have had an obligation to look into it to see, and she may have without me knowing. That's how cops work. She may have looked in to see if I did what Dusty alleged. And if she had found that I had, I probably would have been fired because I was charged with violating a emergency protective order, not a temporary restraining order. This is a emergency order of protection that comes as a result of domestic violence, actually, allegation. Not a conviction, just an allegation. And that's what Dusty did after a month after she lied about the first allegations. She waited 2 weeks and then she tried a pretext call against me. And in a previous video, I told the hypothetical Rockwall law enforcement who's watching this to go find that pretext call, because she admits to a second video camera on October 28th. She admits to all these crimes at different points in time. But every point in time, she's got the attention of some other person who can't stop staring at her boobs that she'll show you in order to distract you to get away with what she was getting away with. Okay. Dora Lynn Pecina told me, no, I can't do that. Just like David Rakow told me, or interrupted my attorney at the time and said, no, you're not going to get her geographic location data 3 months later when she tried to do it, when she tried to revoke my bond in March. So Dusty's a busy little bee trying to put me in jail back then. And there were any number of ways that I could prove that she was lying at the time. And every step of the way I was met with no. Now, as I said, Dora Lynn Pecina probably did get those records and had a professional analyze it. And there's a reason for that. She once had my handwriting analyzed by an expert handwriter, because I had written down, I'm on a conference call one day. I worked from my home a lot, or apartment, and I was on a conference call. I was on at least 2 conference calls a day back then. And they were on mute, and I was listening to Howard Stern. And Howard Stern had, I can't remember the name, but it was a pretend black helicopter pilot. She used to say, a lot, kill the white man. This is a joke. I hope YouTube, when they translate this, doesn't take that literally. But that's what Dora Lynn Pecina did, intentionally. Dora Lynn Pecina is not stupid. I had written that. I'm sitting on a conference call. I just wrote, kill the white man. I'm not a racist. I think that bigots, I can't stand bigots. But I had written that on a piece of paper. Actually, in a notebook that was given to me as part of a campaign at the phone company. It had an SBC written on the front. So Dora Lynn took it out of a backpack or something of mine once. No. I'll tell another story of how she got that. But it was my property that she took from my house. Dusty gave it to her. And where I had written that in this little notepad, but to prove, in Dora Lynn's mind, she has to prove that I wrote it. So she hires an outside handwriting analyzer, whatever, forensic handwriting person, to compare it to other things I had written to say, yeah, he wrote that. This is Dora Lynn Pecina. This is an HR person at AT&T. You think I was going to get anything exculpatory from her? Hell no. May she burn in hell. She's a dirty motherfucker. She deserves it, and she knows it, because she knows that she makes little lies like that. And what the result of those are is that people are falsely convicted, or the false accusation lives on forever, or whatever. She's just that kind of dirty motherfucker person. That was funny. That's why I tell it now. I didn't mean to go into that. We're getting to Brett Hall. Probably not quite as bad as Dora Lynn Pecina, because she's sort of in a hateful kind of dirty motherfucker way. Brett's probably just a mild-manner dirty judge. So I told you how Rakow was conflicted, and he was making decisions that he shouldn't have made while he was conflicted. You can go watch the Rockwall County Injustice video for context on that. So at the March hearing where Dusty tried to revoke my bond, she said I chased her to work. It didn't work because I didn't chase her to work. But I won that hearing in March. I didn't have my freedom taken. My bond wasn't revoked. And as I say in the video, it was because Rakow stopped my attorney from getting Dusty's geodata. Why? I don't know, but he did. And it was as I explained it. Halfway through my attorney asking the question, Rakow interrupts him, asks the judge, not the prosecutor, and says, no, we're not going to have that. That's bizarre. Does that mean he's raping Rockwall High School kids with Dusty? I don't know. It's odd. Because first, he's not supposed to be making that decision at all, but he's decided he's going to continue perpetrating the unethical part of making decisions in a case he's conflicted in. David Rakow, District Judge, Rockwall County. That was him in 2007. That is a fact. It's a matter of record. Well, there was Dusty in that hearing. There was one other guy. I think his first name's Mike. Michael Goodman, attorney at law, Rockwall, Texas. You should hire him because he is super duper smart. Because if you watch that video, at Rakow video, you'll also know to the end. You'll also know that when I get to the end, I explain I didn't win that day in March with Rakow, even though I won the hearing, the prima facie hearing. I kind of won because I didn't get revoked. But I really didn't win because had I gotten her cell phone data, kind of the second opportunity to request it, it would have proven that she's lying. Well, Mike Goodman, attorney at law, who Dusty notably told me she thought he was exceptionally attractive. Mike, if you're watching, Dusty thought you were. She didn't say exceptionally. She never used sophisticated words, but it was not just, I think he's attractive. One day she comes home from a hearing in her divorce in the summer of 2006. I said, "Hey, Dusty, how was your day today?" And she would tell me about how Galen Ray Sumrow et al. Came out of their office and all hugged her. Literally, she told me that. And then she also talked about how Mike Goodman was or did, or whatever they talked about. And on one of those times, I said, "What do you think about him?" Because she had previously, within a few months before that, she had a bankruptcy attorney in Garland that she told me he told her she and Tony Corsi, Reagan's dad, owed him some money for the bankruptcy that they were filing. And she stopped by his office on the way home from work. And when she got home, I said, "How'd that meeting go?" She goes, "Well, he said that I could have sex with him to pay off the debt, pay off what we owe." So I got fired up. I'm living with her. I'm still tricked by her. So, I had that response. Well, when she came home from a divorce hearing, for some reason, I said, "Well, what do you think about Goodman?" Well, because I don't know him from Adam. She was kind of describing him, and she used something just beyond he's attractive. It was kind of one level up from that. Particularly attractive. Particularly is not a word she would use, although that's pretty precise for her, whatever kind of lingo she used. So at that hearing, I didn't lose my freedom, but I also didn't really win. And I had an attorney in McKinney for a civil lawsuit I'd filed against my ex-wife who was tampering with visitation. And I was talking to her on and off. And Mike Goodman knew I was talking to her. So Mike was in that hearing that day in March where I didn't get my freedom taken. So to someone who's not in the know and just thinks that Dusty lost her allegation, then that's sort of a win for me to most people who viewed that hearing or hear what I say about it. It's a matter of record, so I'm not lying. Mike Goodman called my attorney in McKinney to notify her he was going to sue me, or that Dusty was going to sue me, and he was representing her. And told my attorney, Kathy was her first name, Mike will remember this, that I had a bad day in court in Rockwall. And I didn't talk to Mike that day. That afternoon, I remember I got home that afternoon and I talked to Kathy on the phone. She goes, "Hey, I need to let you know I accepted service on a lawsuit that Dusty's filing and Mike is handling. And he said you had a bad day in court today." I remember telling her, I said, "Kathy, she tried to revoke my bond and it didn't work." "What do you mean bad day? What is today? Opposite fucking day?" And she and I kind of laughed at Mike because Mike is explaining that I had a bad day. Mike was right. Not only is he particularly attractive, he's exceptionally intelligent. Or stupid, and I'm just making fun of him. Sorry, Mike. But he did sue me on Dusty's behalf. He later sued me personally, and I'll get to that, if not in this video, at another one. He lost that too. But so he sues me, and what he's suing for is a temporary restraining order for Dusty. And I don't remember what they alleged. I don't even think they alleged anything in the initial filing. And he filed it, I think, in April of that year. So the next month after March, Mike Goodman files a lawsuit on behalf of Dusty in Brett Hall's court in Rockwall. He was already a district judge. This was a civil case. And I was served on that, served notice. So I knew it was coming through my attorney, Kathy, who was a good attorney. And that kind of percolated along for a little while. And I never got notice of a hearing. And summer goes by. Then in August, I'm served or notified that there's a hearing for that temporary restraining order lawsuit that Dusty filed. Now, I still haven't been to court over Dusty's false allegations that were misdemeanors. And I'm being sued by Dusty. Well, I show up in August. And at Brett Hall's court, pro se. And right when I got there, I filed a countersuit against Dusty in the same court. And it requested a temporary restraining order. Yeah, I had done my homework and filled out everything I thought I needed to fill out, and made the right allegations and thought I met the burden. And when we got there, Dusty was there. I think her mom was there, and Mike was there. And we go to the bench just to talk to Brett. He's not honorable Brett Hall to me. He's dishonorable, dirty motherfucker to me, and this is why. No animosity. He's just that. Mike and I go up to the bench, and first thing that happens is Brett says, "Mike, I don't think your lawsuit holds water anymore. This is literally what he said, almost verbatim. They might not remember it because dirty motherfuckers tend to rationalize their dirtiness by ignoring it and forgetting about it. So let's just say that they're just kind of victims of Dusty and they're helping her carry forward her rapes of high school students. That's probably the case, but this still happened. So me and Mike walk up. Dusty and her mom, I've got a story about her mom later, are sitting on the front row in the court, and immediately before we could say anything, Brett says, "Mike, I don't think your lawsuit's going to hold up. You've waited too long from when you first filed it. You've got something like 60 or 90 days, and we're past the 90 days. He said, "I can approve it." He's talking to Mike, Brett Hall. "I can approve it, but it'll lose on appeal." Think this through. Lay people might not recognize all these little flags. I'm pro se. I'm not, you don't know if I can file an appeal, but you know that my chances of winning an appeal as a pro se litigant is nil. So this is Brett Hall assuming, I guess he could assume that I would hire an attorney at that point. But he also knew that I had filed a lawsuit that morning in his court against Dusty. And, but he says that to Mike. Then he reaches around, and if anybody knows his court at that time in 2007, you'll know this. These are little details that I remember, along with I could grant your restraining order, but it would be overturned. That really happened. But then he turns around and he has a bookshelf behind his desk. Not this grand, majestic mahogany barristers. It's just a bookshelf. I think it was white shelving, if I remember. And he grabs the Texas Criminal Rules of Procedure. He opens it up, and he's got the little post-it bookmarks to the section where it says what he does. And he gives it to Mike. He turns it around and says, Mike, look. He says, take this. This is Brett Hall, judge. Me and Mike are right in front of him. We're the only ones talking to him. It's three of us. He says, Mike, take this book back and read this right here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, and so Mike takes it and goes back to the bench next to this, and he's reading why his lawsuit's not going to work because it's timed out. Now, you could say, well, that's kind of Brett taking up for me and saying, he could approve it, he might not approve it. Okay, I'll give him that for now. Mike comes back up, and he says, yeah, I understand. And I think on her lawsuit, it's not tabled it. That's parliamentary procedures. We state it, or what? Not state it, but we reset it. That's it. We reset it. This is law. But as soon as Mike comes back, I took a shot at him because he spelled Dusty D-U-S-T-I, and Dusty was D-U-S-T-Y on a birth certificate. At some point in her life, she started signing her name or going as D-U-S-T-I, and that is what Mike Goodman put on the lawsuit. So I called him confused. Calling a lawyer confused is sort of especially in court, is like the Shakespearean insult of insults. My brother, counsel, must be confused. I said, Mike obviously is confused. He doesn't even know how to spell her name. He got mad about that. He said, I know who she is. Do you? So exactly what it said. If he's watching this, he may remember that. So after we kind of did that little dance, we reset that part. And I said, then we brought up, I said, Your Honor, at the time, he's Your Honor. I don't know that he's dirty. I said, Your Honor, I filed a lawsuit against her too. I want to be heard on that today. He goes, okay, give me a few hours. And he said, come back at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and this wasn't a full hearing, I don't think, where they were going to hear me make a argument in favor of what I was filing, because Mike didn't show back up at that afternoon hearing, or Dusty, but I did, because I guess that part of it could have been an ex parte, not necessarily an oral argument about anything substantive for that afternoon hearing. I don't know civil law. But it may have fit within an ethical meeting between me and the judge. But for whatever reason, maybe not. Hall says, yeah, let me read it, come back at 2 or 3 o'clock. So I went back at 2 or 3 o'clock. And he said, yeah, I can't grant this. Now I can't grant this, is what he told me. He told Mike the same thing earlier. But when he said he couldn't, he said, it's because you're outside of the 90 days. And oh, by the way, here's the exact spot in the Texas Civil Rules of Procedure where it says so. And he gives them the book and it's highlighted. And Mike goes and reads it. And then Mike comes back and he takes one on the chin about being confused on how to spell Dusty's name. So then at 2 or 3 o'clock when I came back, Hall came off the bench, met me in the middle of the kind of gallery of the courtroom, said, I can't grant this. I can't rule on this today, or I can't grant this. And I said, why? And he said, well, I can't tell you. And he says, I can't tell you in a appropriately respectful way that a judge might tell a pro se defendant, look, I don't have anything against you, but I can't give you legal advice and I can't explain the law to you. But he explained the fucking law to Michael dumbass Goodman 4 hours earlier. Gave him the textbook on how to do law and had the page opened in the highlight. I had to post it on the page. That's unethical. That's Brett Hall. Does it rise to what Rakow did? No. not in my, not to me. But I didn't file a grievance again or a complaint against Brett Hall then. I did file 2 complaints against Rakow then. I don't think I filed any complaints against Goodman either. Poor Goodman. He was young. He was about Dusty's age, and it's just fun to pick on him because he's kind of aloof, or he was then, and kind of an airhead. And he may not be. It's just he made some dumb decisions back then. You know, every defendant deserves representation. You know how that works. Goodman knows what I was alleging back then, which was Dusty's a deviant sexual predator who raped high school kids 9 times in 2006. But he didn't have to believe it either. So the funny part to that was kind of, or the ironic funny part, was really that Mike told Kathy, my attorney, in March earlier that year, 1 month before he filed he was at the hearing to revoke my bond, and he heard that hearing with me and Rakow and my attorney and the prosecutor. And I won that day. Mike's conclusion from me winning that day was that I had a bad day. and he was right. I just didn't know it until fucking November of that year when Rakow recuses himself over a conflict. Did Mike know it? Is that much of a look? Conspiracy in a situation like this, especially in storytelling, it can be fun, but it can also be dangerous because it's easy to pick on. But there's kind of 2 kinds of conspiracies. There's sophisticated conspiracies with serious intent. And then there's conspiracies that happen just accidentally because people are dirty and or stupid. So the outcome is the same. Every step of the way, every step I took at that time resulted in either an unethical thing that a judge did or just bizarre corruption from a guy named Carl Asselbrook or the FBI, which I've talked briefly about, but I'll get more into detail about that later. So that happened. So I covered the geographic location, the geodata from the cell phone, Dora Lynn Pecina, Brett Hall, Mike Goodman. Mike had sued me later, and he didn't serve me. Sorry, it's warm down here. He didn't serve me properly for a lawsuit he filed on his behalf, and he may have been pro se in it, that claimed that I hacked into his server, his Mike Goodman attorney at law server, somehow, which I'm sure he wasn't hosting it, so he would have had a web server service or a web hosting service back then. So I assume Mike is alleging that I hacked into that and rerouted, rerouted was the word, internet traffic to me, away from his Mike Goodman Law or whatever website. So when I say he's dumb or an airhead or aloof, let's unpack that. I hate that word, but this is perfect for here because it's making fun of Mike. Technically, what Mike really was saying, if I did that, it's not that server that I'm rerouting traffic to. Now, it could have been that I hacked into the server and it would have been technically possible for me to hack into a server and do a DNS forward on his server, on his DNS server. It takes a lot of credentials to be able to do that. Even then it did. But that's what he was playing dumb in his allegations in order to meet the minimum hurdles of filing a lawsuit. So, he's hacked into my web server and every time anybody searches for Mike Goodman Law, they wind up on his website. Well, they did, but not because I hacked into a server. I had a website back then where I was saying the same things about Dusty. I already knew what she had done with the high school kids back then, and I was saying a lot more, a lot less. There's a word I'll think of later. A lot less thoughtful. I was kind of all over the map, and I was complaining about things and spewing hate that I'm not now, but it drew a lot of traffic. In fact, as I recall, last 6 months, I was getting about 135 daily unique visitors. And so that may not sound like a lot, but I'd get traffic, hits. I'd have over 1,000 hits a day, 1,000 visitors a day. But of the unique visitors, it's about 135. That's a pretty reliable number. And I don't know if that same ratio works. If you get 100, 135, that means you got 1,000, 1,300 traffic activity. But I did talk about Mike Goodman a lot back then. I was making fun of him then. And I was a lot more active. I'd write 2 or 3 articles a day, almost like a guy named Turtle Boy is right now in the Karen Reed trial. Turtle Boy is a MAGA. I'm not a MAGA. I watched Turtle Boy. In fact, I've got him on pause right now because I'm going to finish the rest of the show tonight. Karen Reed is set up by the government. And I'm addicted to that trial because of all the similarities in a dirty cop conspiracy, even if it's just a stupidity conspiracy because they just are not sophisticated enough to do whatever the truth is up there. Karen Reed is not there's enough reasonable doubt just on the face of it. She's probably actually innocent, which is a legal term. But I was writing about as much as Turtle Boy wrote in the sort of the heyday of him writing about the Karen Reed trial. So that amount of activity generates high SEO, high traffic. And that's what, when anybody searched Mike Goodman, my website would be at the top of the Google list. And so people would click on me. I didn't try and I didn't spoof his website. I was just making fun of him. Still, no animosity, Mike. Dusty thought you were better looking than me. So, and better looking than most, particularly. So, congratulations. But he tried to sue me for that. That was the allegation. Last thing about the technicality of the allegation. Really what it meant was, I don't know if he understood this. At the time, there were 6 or 7 or 8 top-level DNS servers in the world. Now I think there's 12. But at the time, there were about 6 or 7. Top-level DNS servers are like when you open up, when you try and go to a website, either specifically or you type in a URL, google.com. Well, before anybody goes to google.com, your computer makes a little connection to one of the 6 or 7 top-level DNS servers back then. You know, most important servers in the world as far as the internet goes, because they said, oh, google.com goes to whatever their IP address is. So they were the kind of translator from google.com to the IP address, and then they'd send you to the IP address. Well, what Mike was really alleging, the only way this could have really worked the way he alleged it in narrative form in his lawsuit, was that I hacked into all 6 top-level DNS servers. Listen, Lane Aiken thinks I'm a narcissist, which is to say that he thinks I'm a nobody and just a nobody who can't do anything and doesn't deserve anything like due process, and that I only think I do. So somewhere between that and I couldn't code a Python script right now alone or without the help of something online to save my life. I can write an HTML page, not a complicated one, but I'm not a coder. I can't hack into anything, and so that's what Mike was alleging, is that the practicality of what he alleged in his lawsuit with the words he used would have implied, even though he might not have understood it, that I hacked into all 6 or 7 of the top-level DNS servers. Hell, I can't even hack into a Windows machine that's legitimately owned by me if I've forgotten the password. So, me hacking into one of the top-level DNS servers? Come on, Mike. But I wasn't properly served. I didn't properly receive service. So he had to dismiss it. Doesn't mean that he didn't lie to the FBI about it later. Played dumb and lied to the FBI, and there's a 302 of it. But that happened too. I have said in another social media platform that I beat Mike Goodman 3 times in a court. I cannot for the life of me remember what I meant by the 3rd time. The practical outcome of what he did meant that I beat him when he was representing Dusty and filing for the TRO, because he filed a motion to dismiss with prejudice, definitely for want of prosecution, early 2008. So he was denied the TRO in August. It sat there active but not being heard, kind of inactive, for another 6 months. And then I got a letter in the mail from Mike Goodman that said, hey, I'll dismiss if you dismiss. Because my lawsuit, wow, thunder. My lawsuit was still pending, although inactive. And even though Brett Hall said I can't grant this TRO, my lawsuit stayed there. So did Mike pull out in January, February of 2008 because he was defeated? I had proven Dusty lied in the court, in the trial in December. So that was a defeat. Then he just kind of tucked his tail and withdrew the lawsuit. And so that's a win to me. I said, yeah, I'll dismiss mine. I waited for him to dismiss his, and I thought about not dismissing mine and moving forward with it. I should have, but I didn't. And then he lost in his lawsuit to I'm getting the lawsuit he filed against me. I remember the lawsuit clearly, and what happened was he filed it. I didn't get notice. I saw him in 2010 in the Collin County Courthouse. I saw him. He saw me. He didn't know I saw him. He's walking into one courtroom. I'm walking to the next one over. I look over. I see him. I look back, but he looks at me after I look back. So he sees me, and he knows I'm available to receive any kind of service. He immediately files a motion to dismiss that lawsuit. That's Mike. He lost. To me, pro se. Narcissist pro se. I say things in previous videos that may sound misogynistic. They're not, technically. Sorry, it is hot and humid. I turn off everything that makes a noise for the video. But Dusty Broadfoot, Dusty Miller, Dusty Corsi, she is a deviant. She for real is a deviant sexual predator. And for real, I'll pay you $250,000 for anyone who tells me either that any of the names of the high school kids who will kind of come forward and testify to that and prove up what I can prove with the videotapes. I hope this sounds better. I'm trying out this microphone. I'm trying to eliminate echo. So that's Brett Hall. Have a nice night.